It's really quiet.
Good man.
Good, how are you doing? That means not quite.
Okay.
Still 4:20.
Okay, give me a second.
Okay, we'll call to order the study meeting of the West Valley City Council. This it's May 3rd, 2022. It is 4:30. We're in the multipurpose room of West Valley City Hall. Everyone is in attendance except Councilman Jake Fitzimanu is excused for tonight. All others are present. We will now turn to the minutes of April 26th, 22. Is there any discussion or a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those pass. We'll now review the regular meeting for this evening. Mr. Pyle, we have 4 meetings.
Thanks, ma'am. Yes, so there aren't any changes on the 3 RDA Housing Authority or Building Authority, and the only change in the regular meeting is there was a presentation update, which I think you all got to.
Okay. Hey, did anybody have any questions with any of those meetings? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first public hearing for next week. It is Z2 2022, and we'll turn the time over to Mr. Pastrick.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, Council. I'll share my screen and walk through this property that will look, I think, familiar to some, as we had a proposal on the same property about 2 years ago, actually. So. All right, so the property in question here is it's a zone change from the agricultural zone to the RM zone. You can see the property at 4590 west, or excuse me, 4590 south, 5600 west. It's about 11 acres, a triangle shaped piece here. Just to orient the council, we have single family homes on the north. You have different commercial uses on the east side of 5600 west, some storage units, orthodontist office and tire shop, those kinds of uses. And then along the south side, you have the railroad tracks. Here's just a close-up of the piece. Just for information, on the south end of this property, there's a small Dominion Energy parcel. So that's what that little fenced-in area is on the south. You can see a driveway kind of leading towards that. So just a few images of the property to help with orientation. So this is looking west, so that where you see the precast wall, there is that Dominion Energy property that's on the south end of the site. This is looking to the northwest from 5600 west. Out in the distance on the left, you can see the Mountain View corridor there with the berm. This is on Cape Vista Drive. So this is the street directly north. So you have homes on both sides of this street. And then you'll remember there's on the west end of the property on the north side, there's a stub street. So this is looking south down at that stub street. And then at the end of the stub street is the property in question. This is looking to the southeast from the stub street, looking south on 5600 west from Cape Vista. And then looking west along closer to the north end. So those fences on the right side would be the fences for the homes that are abutting this property. And then just another close up of the of the north side of the property. So here's just a copy of the zoning map for that area. So you can see the agricultural zone, and then residential zoning to the north. And then the gray would be the manufacturing zoning that's to the east and south. All right, so before I get into this, I want to clarify this concept is not their concept, okay? I put this in for reference. This is what D.R. Horton proposed 2 years ago that the council denied. And so I wanted just to, as a reminder, show you what was rejected and compare that now with what's being proposed. So in this concept, there was, you had an area for 4 lots, which is about 1.7 acres here in this western portion. Then the majority was townhomes on 8.2 acres. Then you had just over an acre of commercial down in this southeast corner. This concept here was what the Planning Commission saw. And so as this was going through the Planning Commission, we were having discussions about public versus private streets, but the council had not yet given the direction of, okay, let's change the ordinance and prohibit private streets. So this concept had a combination of public streets, kind of that looped road, and then you had private fingers, if you will, on the north end and then on the south. And at the time, just again for comparison, again, a lot of history on this one. This showed what D.R. Horton's proposal was that was denied, and then the More Homes application that went to that was reviewed by the Planning Commission. So you can see the differences. So just quickly, there were, in the case of the latest proposal, there's no commercial, right? It's all residential. There's just a couple of single family lots, whereas the previous proposal had 4. There's actually, while there's more land for townhomes, there's fewer units. So they did drop the density significantly. The unit sizes, they increased significantly. They're also proposing, finished basements on this latest proposal, whereas the previous proposal did not have basements. They've included some commitments on the interiors in the development agreement. You can see the density comparison. And then again, the proposal that Mr. Moore had included a city park that would be dedicated to the city. So we had the Planning Commission make their recommendation, and then between that point and now, the council has given clear direction on what we want on the streets. And so knowing that, Mr. Moore kind of went back to the drawing board and came up with 2 additional concepts, which I'll show you now. Now, in your packet, these are black and white. They're exactly the same, except these are in color. That's the only difference. I got these earlier today. So this one also has the city park, has the 2 single family lots up in the western portion, but everything in this concept would be public streets. So this would meet, assuming that what the council gave us as direction passes, this would meet what the council had directed. They did take out a few units. So the count or the version that went to Planning Commission had 86 units. This has 83. So to make this all work, they had to drop a few units. So this was one option. The other would be if the council is not interested in the park, this next option drops that out in that western portion, and it just puts in essentially 4 single family lots to kind of finish that cul-de-sac. And then you would have the townhome area remaining, and again, all public streets. So hopefully that helps kind of know the history and how we got to this point. And so from the applicant's perspective, I believe he's fine with, if the council is supportive of just the zone change, he's comfortable with either option, either the city park or without the city park, either way. So I think it's really more what the council's preference would be. And then just some information about the units themselves. So you'll see on the site plan, there's a variety of building sizes. You have some that have 3 units, some 4, some more than that. This is the typical. So you can see a 4-unit building. So this would be, or the units would have the garages in front. You can see the side elevation at the bottom. And then this would be the rear elevation at the top and then the other side at the bottom. And in terms of floor plans, as I mentioned, each unit would have a finished basement that would be just over 700 square feet or larger, depending on the unit. So that's the basement level floor plan. You have the kitchen and living and the garage on the main level. And then on the upper level would be all of the bedrooms on the upper level. And so maybe just go back to the concept plans here. So again, the two concepts. So just to recap then, the request would be to rezone 10 acres to the RM zone and then 1 acre to the R110 zone is the proposal. However, if the council was more supportive of this option that dropped the park, we would need to change that. The R110 would grow a little bit and the RM portion would shrink.
Any questions? Are you finished?
I'm
One more
glad you
thing.
mentioned it. One more thing I would just mention is that we do have a development agreement that the Planning Commission recommended. Because these latest concepts do have some revisions, if the council is supportive of one or the other of these options, we would need to make some revisions to the development agreement to sync it with whichever concept is the preference.
Okay. All right, any questions?
As I remember the discussion a couple of years ago, there was quite a bit of neighbor disapproval. Has he overcome that or?
So I believe some of the issues that were addressed or that were brought up by the residents have been addressed. So part of the concern was that on that north side, having the building set back from so that they're not, right next to that side property line. In this concept where these are the rear yards of the units, they'd have to be at least 20 feet. And I believe in this case, it might be slightly more than 20 feet than what's shown here. So that was one concern. We did have some feedback from residents about having a park. And so that's why we, had floated the idea of maybe having a park in a portion of this. Now, having one that's roughly 1 acre, not sure if that's ultimately what the residents wanted. I know at least one suggestion was, let's have the whole thing a park. I'm like, well, probably can't afford 11 acres, but so that was another concern. Another issue that was brought up would be the size of the units. So with the D.R. Horton proposal, the units were just barely over our minimum size for a 3-bedroom unit. And they didn't have basements. And so they were worried about, hey, would these just become rentals or just not be nicer units that people would want to stay in. And so the latest proposal, again, do have basements and are larger units overall. So those are some of the issues I recall being brought up.
I think that they have a concern about the commercial down on the point of the.
There were a few comments about the commercial about, is that really enough for that to be viable, especially where you do have commercial uses across the street, but on this side, there really isn't any commercial. And so, and I think the council shared some of those same concerns was.
They had some concern about their kids getting down into that commercial area too.
Right.
Established residents already. Okay.
Steve, what kind of fences will be around this?
So in the development agreements, they had proposed a precast wall along 5600 West, and it also includes a small strip of landscaping. So we didn't want to have, sidewalk and wall, but similar to, there's a project on 27th West just across the street from UDOT where they put in a precast wall and have some landscaping there. They're proposing on the other sides, it would be vinyl fencing. It would be on the other sides of the site.
So even though there's fences on the north side, they put up the vinyl fence along with that.
Correct. And as you look at some of the images here, I'll go back to those. You'll notice that there's kind of a mixture. I mean, it looks like there's some wood, maybe some vinyl, and I think further down you have other fences. So, and that's fairly common with new developments. They'll often just put up their own fence so it's all consistent, even though there's an existing fence.
Okay.
So they would work with the homeowners there if they wanted to keep their fence. They just put their new fence right next to it, I guess.
That's typically what happens is they'll put up the new fence right next to it. And the reason is that to try to tear down a fence, then you have to worry about tying in side fences, which gets more tricky. And then you may have some that do and others that don't want to do that. So it's simpler to just put in a new fence next to it.
Go back to the concept and tell me about the southeast corner. Looks like a private street with parking.
Yes. So the reason for that is you recall that there's that Dominion Energy parcel to the south. That parcel has no direct access to 5600. So there's actually an easement through the property. So the reason they're providing that little access there is they basically have to because of the easement. So that's for essentially a driveway for Dominion Energy to get access to their property.
And then is that additional parking for the development or?
Yeah, for the guests. Right?
Yeah, they're showing that as part of the guest parking. So the council may recall that there's recently a change in the code that requires that, so every unit would have a 2-car garage, also a driveway you can park 2 vehicles in. And then on top of that, you have the 0.75 stalls per unit. So that you'll notice in the plan, there's kind of pockets of parking kind of scattered in different places. The other thing I would add is that now with 29 feet of pavement, there would also be areas within this where, again, if you don't have driveways, so for example, in this place, along this area here, you could potentially park on the street as well.
How often does the train go by?
You know, it's interesting. At the planning commission, we got like wild swings. Some people saying it was every day. And
have we verified anything there or?
I would tend to believe the residents that live right next door, and they were saying it was, from what I recall, it's a daily thing, or at least, yeah, it was what I recall. And I would tend to believe those that live next door. So,
Was part of it was, I think that train delivered ink and paper and that to newspaper agency. So
Really?
That's not delivered as much anymore.
And without the park, they have plenty of open space. It says here the 52%.
that's what they're showing in this concept is 52%.
Okay. And that needs to be at least 50, correct?
That's right.
So that's good. Okay. Any other questions?
Do you know the density per acre for each concept?
So what was proposed, and this was the density numbers I'll refer to are just the townhome portion. Okay. So in the concept that was D.R. Horton, that was 12 units to the acre. The option that went to the planning commission was 8.6. This one here, if you're including that park area in the RM zone, that would be 8.3. And then this one, since you have more R110 area and the park area is out, would be 9.1.
I think my biggest concern is we don't have big parcels left. And I think that was the purpose of the RE and the RS zone is to rezone these bigger parcels into that RE, RS zone. So I like this concept, but I prefer it on some smaller infill parcels and save these bigger parcels for an RE zone. situation or RS.
Okay.
Maybe just one quick comment. When the council created the RS zone, there was a maximum of 10 acres that was put in place. And so in this particular case, it's 11 acres. So the site overall would not be eligible, just as an FYI.
Okay, thank you.
Bet.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I have one more. When are we going to see this? I guess it's on next week's.
Right. And so as Nicole and I chatted about this, I think this was scheduled just before we had the direction to have the 2-week span. And again, so it will be on the regular meeting for next week. If it didn't sound like there was clear direction or if there even is a preference here. So I think what we'll do as far as the development agreement is keep it as is, but just realizing that if the council does in the discussion lean towards approval, we would need to make some revisions. At this point, I'm just not sure which way to revise, if that makes sense.
So it doesn't state public roads in the current development agreement.
Correct. However, there are some things that, for example, like the number of units, like this latest concept has a few fewer units. Park or no park, right, would be another point. And there's a few others, like the number of parking stalls was based on the number of units before. So just some kind of fine tuning, if you will, we need to do based on this latest concept.
Would it be cumbersome to just make those adjustments and have one for Plan B and one for Plan A?
We could certainly do that.
I would rather have the development agreement exactly how it's supposed to be before we vote on it
You bet.
and not have to go back and negotiate, change it.
Right.
So if it's not difficult, we just have a Plan A and Plan B.
We'll do that. So we'll
Okay,
have
thank you.
in the packet, both options. So if you lean one way or the other, we'll have that ready.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Anything else? Okay, oh, no,
I just want to say that if there are members of our council who have reservations about this, who might approve it if there were some changes, right now is probably the best time to talk about it, so that if the developer, is willing to make any changes that would make this allowable, I think we should bring it up.
Steve, does it look like a public road?
yeah, so
Yes.
you are public road now.
That's correct.
Have they done a traffic study yet?
So they have not had a traffic study done at this point.
Scott brought up that he'd rather see an RE zone.
Yeah, I would. And that's another reason is the traffic. I mean, 56 is, I can see, what is it, 83 units trying to make a left turn on 56 at 7 in the morning to get to work. And it's going to be a lot of cars.
I dropped off my daughter at Hunter High School just down the road.
Yeah.
And made left turns there. And it's really not that bad. I mean, I had to wait a little bit longer because of people turning into Hunter High School, making left turns there. And I don't think very many people will be making left turns into this at 7 in the morning. I don't,
Just be leaving.
from my experience, I don't think it would be that hard to get out of here.
Yeah, Mountain View helped a lot.
Yeah.
Did it?
Okay, any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll now go to our ordinances to 2220. And it's Miss Day. Is she here? Yep, there you go. I turned the wrong way.
Say, I know I saw her earlier.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's good to see you this evening. So this is for a change in the consolidated fee schedule within the municipal code. And what this does is it extends further authorization to the city manager on various recreation service and program fees to be able to make those determinations. Some of you may recall many years ago, we changed this fee schedule, this code, to allow the city manager to make some of those decisions based off of the information that we would bring to him. So when we take a look, we take it very serious when we make any type of fee increases or changes in our services within our department. We look at what is the market, doing, what do we see in typical similar facilities or programs. We also look directly at what our costs are to offer those services. And then we take into consideration the community that we serve. We look at all that information, make a decision that we feel is in the best. And sometimes we choose not to do a fee increase after we look at that. But if we feel like it's time and we need to make those changes, we take that to our city manager and discuss it further. And so it's a system that's worked very well for us for many years with some of the other fees that were on that originally. So as you can see below, the change would now include some of these additional fees at the Family Fitness Center, the golf courses, and at the Utah Cultural Celebration Center. And it is our recommendation that these changes be approved and authorized. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Why did we leave park user fees in rather than amend the way we amended all the others?
We did leave some fees in there that we felt, and we could certainly make that change, but that we felt the council would want to have a say in it a little bit. For example, excuse me, at the fitness center, we still have our membership fees and our drop-in fees, those types of things in there. But we can certainly take a look at some of those other fees as well.
No, I'm just, I looked at it, and all of the Cultural Celebration Center fees were deleted and put under this.
Mm-hmm.
But the park user fees, park pavilion rental, things like that, were not. I just wondering the difference.
Yeah. There's not much other than if the elected officials, if you would want to have some input on some of that. And quite honestly, I want to say in the 23 years I've been with the city, the park pavilion rental fees have gone up once. So it doesn't happen very often on some of those. But there's also the park sports field reservation fees for like our softball complexes and the soccer fields, that kind of thing. And we do monitor that very closely because of what other municipalities and government agencies are doing with theirs. So we can certainly add that to this as well. I'm not sure exactly the process, but we could take a look at that. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
So I don't see the use on here for the football practicing on the parks.
So we do have several third-party groups that run programs for the city. So we're not running them. One is the Ute Conference football. One is the Babe Ruth baseball. We occasionally have West United soccer that use some of our parks, although they're using more of the county parks now. We also have recently in the last couple of years done the Hunter Ute Conference Hunter football as well. And so for those types of youth programs, they have a contract and they pay a fee per participant. So they can roll that. So I can't remember exactly, but I know it was $2. It might have gone up. It might be $3 now. I'm not sure, but it's under contract. And so it's the $2 per youth. When they collect all of their fees, then they pay the city that. And that is to help maintain and take care of the fields. But a tournament coming in or some of those types of things, which is typically what it is, a tournament or adult leagues, are handled differently. They're on a reservation per hour or per day basis, which is what you see here.
And the ones that do use the fields, they're all West Valley residents. They're not coming from outside the city. They're paying $2 a person.
Oh, for the third party. Yes, I believe that there is sometimes some crossover. For example, for the football, for example, we utilize the boundaries for the school they're representing. So if it's Hunter High School. So if Cypress, for example, we have kids that live in West Valley City for Cypress, but also live in Magna. So by far the majority are West Valley City youth, but they have to live within that school district.
Okay. So this just takes away us having to deal with fees in the future?
Yes. But we still have a very strong process, and that's worked for many years on the other fees. We're just including this in that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just trying to understand what the difference is. Is it just because these fees are not as common, or they're a little more unique? So we're transferring that decision-making to the city manager rather than us having to.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll now turn the time over to Mr. Powell for a budget program mod update.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. So there's no new information to be presented. I'll reiterate a couple of things. One thing that I did talk about last week was that I might make the change in the budget for this week where we took out that $250,000 million of health insurance reduction that we found and add in $250,000 from that ongoing program mod list on the highest sort of need basis. Have not done that yet because we don't intend to. The health insurance information that we have came back and continues to look like it is where we thought it would be. So there's really no particular reason for not having done it yet. And when we do it, it won't change the bottom line for that part. The other comment I would just make is a reminder that in terms of any other ongoing program mod additions, we can do that anytime between tentative budget approval and final budget approval. I also still, in any of those instances, it's not going to add to the bottom line in that we don't have extra revenues, but we would be also not predicting that we would need something like a fund balance projection to make those changes if so. And then on the one-time program mod list, so that's the 10 million, which includes everything from the annual fleet purchase to a number of other capital projects we talked about. We could also handle that a number of different ways. We could include it in the tentative budget here. You could do project by project type consideration and approvals during the quarterly budget updates or some version of that. So again, also can be done between tentative budget and final budget adoption. But for the main purpose of adopting a kind of a general philosophy, these are the elements we're including, just roughly the ongoing operational numbers is pretty close to what it'll end up being. And then I guess there was one other comment I was going to make, which was any of those changes ongoing from here to there, of course, I'll detail for you in ongoing budget memos and such as we go on in the next couple of months.
Okay, so with this budget, what would the tax increase be?
It would be approximately 3.5 million and right around 9%, $60 a year, or I forgot the other number. The monthly number was like $5, $6, something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a 9?
9-ish percent.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and I guess I should add that further qualification. That's on the residential side, not on the commercial side because of the exemption.
So explain the exemption.
Good point. Okay, so I think we did talk about this in one of the memos I submitted, so you can refer back to that just for the look at it again. But basically, if you live in a residential property, you get a 45% exemption off of the value, which then is subtracted from your property tax bill, whereas the commercial properties don't get that
They pay on the full amount of their value.
valuation, assessed value.
Okay. Any comments, concerns?
Yeah, just one comment, and maybe we can add this or discuss it now up to a future agenda item, but I talked to Mr. Pyle about a council discretionary fund to use for community events or neighborhood whatever, and there was one, and then at a previous council decided not to do away with that. I'd be curious in the council's opinion now on implementing a small discretionary fund for uses like that and whether or not we should bring it back.
Okay,
I think it was like, did you say 67,000?
I think it's 62, and that one still is in
Okay,
for the overall group, but the discussion back a number of years ago was, should we put a small discretionary fund per individual council member to be within their district? And that was not decided upon the council to support. So you still do have that small fund. They never did do the individual, if that's kind of where the conversation would go to. And then, of course, as Will and I talked, I said, of course, the biggest discretionary fund by inherent situation is the unreserved fund balance, which the council directs projects out of at their direction. Project approval, policy change, whatever that might be.
okay. So the 62,000, say Will wants to do a service project in his neighborhood. He's got a park that's just gone to pot, even though his park's really nice. And wants to put $10,000 worth of bark in or something. What would he have to do that?
Well, that's actually a good question.
There we go.
So I would
I have
see
them today.
approaching that two ways, especially given the $10,000 amount, right?
Okay,
On the one hand, because it's below the $30,000, which is my spending limit, he could come to me and I said, well, okay, we've got that much money. It looks like that's not a strain on the budget. There'll be plenty of other money to do other things. They're probably gonna say, yeah, okay, we'll just go get $10,000 from the park. But if it was, say, $35,000, or even if the council just said, we'd like to know about those kinds of projects, then I'd just say, why don't you just raise it in this meeting? And if you guys got four of seven of you or 7 of 7 of you that want to do it, just go do it.
okay,
Either one of those scenarios works just fine for the budget.
I personally think, I don't know in the past, but I personally, I think, because I ran into a couple of things I think I want to share with you guys. I personally want to have that kind of small budget for this district, and so we can do something, we can report back to you guys, or we can ask you guys permission before we're going to do something. For example, like the lady, she fell, the sidewalk, one up and one down. It's a broken sidewalk and she fell up, and then she got $15,000 for her medical expense. If I have that money in $60,000, I can ask someone to fix the sidewalk, correct? And I don't have to go to the whole general. I can come back here and ask, and I maybe can ask you guys, well, hey, I have a problem here in my district, and that lady, she fell up and she got a big, medical expense, and now the sidewalk right there needs to be fixed. And I think maybe we can use that money to do something like that. I think that's maybe feasible. Because I don't have to wait until I talked to Steve Bueller, and then Steve Bueller and I discussed about it. I said, well, Tom, maybe how about the light? I said, I don't know about the light. Maybe that good question. Maybe the light, she didn't see that. So that's how we work into about the light to fix the light for the whole city. But also the sidewalk is maybe the problem. Maybe the light, the big problem. She didn't see it. Yeah. So I prefer to have that small budget. But when we use it, we're going to come to the council and ask permission from the council. Can we do that? Can we send someone to pump the cement into that sidewalk and make that smooth so people, they won't trip over? Is that okay with you guys?
so yeah, that's what we'd have to set up a policy if we want to decide each project as a council. If it's under a certain amount, just talk with Mr. Pyle. What is,
Just my first thoughts are, we do have a sidewalk plan
right,
in the city. So how would we get around that? we're repairing this part over here that is on the plan number 99 in projects instead of the one that's 10 above it at 89.
So you would have both of those sources. I mean, in the instance that Tom's talking about, I can't remember if we actually went out and fixed that sidewalk.
Yeah, you.
Or not.
Oh, you did?
We did,
Okay.
we would have taken that out of the sidewalk budget.
Okay,
Doesn't mean you wouldn't have other kinds of projects that wouldn't necessarily fall under one of those kinds of programs, but in that particular instance, yeah, there'd be other budgetary ways to do it.
What is it, the guy, he retired already, I forgot. Russell,
oh, Russ,
yeah, Russ, yeah, he's very, very good and talked to that landowner, that, yeah, so seeing him and talking, got to get that fixed, I think that's very nice, yeah.
I think if we become aware of something that's a hazard, it ought to move up on the list.
it's true.
There's 2,000 hazards.
I know.
It's just
We
a
don't
question
have
of
money.
priority.
I know.
Right, exactly. And again, we do, it's just divvied out on that priority list we have. And if the council comes and says they have a particular one they want fixed, we'll try to do that particular one best we can, sure.
Is that what you had in mind, Will, was the kind of repairs and things around the city, or?
Yeah, and I think part of it, maybe I had misunderstood. I thought that the discretionary balance or fund was not available, but it sounds like it's more, it was decided not to have individual balances, which I'm fine with. So as long as that's available and we understand how to access it, if we see something in our district or in the city, we can address it.
Okay. Yep, all good with 62? Don't need to move it to 100 for inflation. Just asking
And the
before it
rest.
comes up next week.
Wouldn't mind.
I mean, I think we all know we can draw on
Let's see if
the
we try
reserve
it.
balance
Okay.
if we need to, so.
Yeah,
Doesn't really matter what the number is.
perfect.
But I do think that anything that we request should come before the council, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of just getting with
Especially if we're-
Wayne,
If we're bumping other projects
yeah,
down the list.
then it's open. We all know what's,
Yeah.
you know, what
What's
we're
going on?
trying to get done and,
I know I'd prefer it that way.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That helps me out and I don't end up in a tough spot trying to make some decisions. And some of them would be really easy, right? I mean, if you came to me and said, we need bark in this park and it hasn't had bark in 15 years and there's no dirt, it's pretty easy to say, yeah, you're right, we need bark and we have some money. But still, you know,
Yeah.
somebody might have some other priorities, so.
Okay. Let's move on to council calendar. Anybody have any questions, concerns? None? Do we have a hockey game on Wednesday?
We do.
Okay,
Game 7.
game 7. Good job. Okay,
Would have been better if we had won.
Last night, we'd be done.
did we have a game last night?
Yeah, we lost game 6.
I didn't get tickets to last night's, I guess. Have to find out why.
Find out.
Yeah, I didn't know we had a game because there were no tickets in my thing, so. Okay,
And then if we win tomorrow night, then we'll also have a game on Friday.
That's right.
oh, okay,
Next round.
got it. But that's our police officer banquet, so,
Yeah, that's right. That's Friday night.
yeah,
And
Okay.
there's something else at Mavic Center on Friday, right?
Graduation, I think.
yeah, during the day and then the game at night.
Yeah. So Slick's graduation will be a cool graduation.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll have the ice. Oh, yeah, they should wear thick shoes. Yeah, okay,
Heated socks.
yep, something like that. All right, potential future agenda items. Anyone?
I think about KPI, I think been there about 2 weeks already.
Oh, yeah, I need to finish up on that, so I have it. It's me.
Oh. it's all right.
Yep,
Okay.
Totally me, 100%. I'll take full credit for not having that done.
Yeah,
Nicole did forward me all the KPIs, and so it's just a matter of, and I was actually waiting for Scott to come back. Because he's the one that's really interested in them, so.
I was the one very short in that list. I think you guys have done a lot of good things there, so I don't have anything to say.
Okay,
Yeah.
just waiting for Scott, so we'll get on that one as well.
You want me to send you the Excel file? It might be easier. Yeah, PDFs.
Okay, we'll look at it. We'll talk later.
Okay.
Because I don't know what you sent me, if it was PDFs or what, so. Okay,
The second thing is it kind of like wonder about the Mavis Center, so it's kind of like the financial statement or something we can take a look at and try to figure out how we can do with that.
Can you tell us how, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
kind of related, tell us how the Olympic Committee visit went, more than just your email?
Sure,
Just
yeah.
we-
So,
Part of the discussion.
yeah, there were 3 IOC representatives, one from Germany, his name was Matthias Kestner. And then there was another guy also from Germany, his name was Stefan Koff, I want to say. And then a guy from France, his name is, I forgot his name. And I kind of got the impression that they were all former Olympians. I might be wrong on that, but they were actual IOC staffers. And so basically what they wanted to do was just do the walkthrough of the facility and see what kind of shape it was in, what kind of facilities did it have, how did we utilize it last time around, how would that look possibly different this time. Fraser Bullock, who's the, whatever they're calling the committee, the exploration committee, executive or director, and Colin Hilton, who also is the executive director of the Legacy organization now. So they're in charge of keeping up like the ski jump and the Kearns Oval and that sort of thing. Was also there and has also been involved in the bid examination. So they were there as well. And then there were a couple of other local staff sort of representatives. So we talked about things like, how did we do parking last time and how would we do it this time? How about the media setup? What's the difference now in hotels? Like, for example, now I can't remember which hotels have been completed previous to the Maverick and which weren't, but we basically had almost no hotel rooms last time around. Now we have 1,500 plus, almost in the immediate vicinity. So how would that affect? What about transit? We didn't have tracks last time. Now we have tracks. What would mass transit look like? So things like that. All the way down to even like we were showing them under the bleachers where now is storage area and how that used to be set up as locker room space, because you didn't just have 2 hockey teams there, right? You had like 6 at once, either practicing or getting ready to play or whatever in these bracket games, like one right after another on the days that were the Olympics. So stuff like that.
What does it entail for the city as far as cost, expenses and revenues?
Yeah, so that's
If they get
Right.
awarded. Again.
right. So that's a great question. And on a net basis, we'll get a lot of money. Right now, we've already been approved at a state support level legislatively for a $20 million improvement. That would have to be matched, as I understand. And these terms are really sort of still under negotiation, obviously, because we don't even have a bid yet. But the way we're talking about that now, debt service and other expenses that we're already bearing would make up our match. Also, on an operational revenue standpoint, that's just hard costs like capital improvement. On an operational standpoint, we already have a record of what it took to do this last time around, along with ideas about how we would make that better or different this time. So we've also basically negotiated a use agreement, very preliminary, that basically says they'll pay for all of that. So there really is no net cost to us other than peripheral stuff that we might do around. Like, for example, let's say we were doing traffic control right on the venue, police presence, security, that sort of thing. They would cover all that. If we wanted to do increased police presence or security, maybe outside the perimeter in a like a farther basis, we might end up bearing some costs like that. But that would be more soft and indirect type costs.
I remember when we did it in 2002. It was, of course, right after 9/11. And so security was much stricter and harder than normal, even for IOC. Even
Right.
IOC was, I volunteered with them and drove one of their VIP shuttles. And, you know, I think I ended up parking somewhere on the far end of parking lot D, which is as close as I get my VIPs.
Yeah.
So it'd be probably a lot easier on security and traffic and that.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. The other, and again, when I say I don't know, I just don't know literally, because I mean, you think about things that have things gone back or gotten easier since 9/11 at the airports? No. So would this be different or considered different from the security standpoint? I don't know. It'd be easier from we're ready. We already did it once before. That's for sure.
Because I remember we even had streets, one-way streets marked out and that.
Right. That's interesting.
Took me by surprise when I got out here because wait a minute, I always go this way.
Right, Also to the question, so Fraser, who we've already been meeting on a staff level over the last couple of years. So all along that time frame, we've had a very open discussion about what do you think our chances are? What's the competition like? Is it feasible from a financial standpoint? Would it be better or worse? And throughout that whole discussion, I believe, and including the other day when we were there with them, his impression is that our chances are very good, haven't diminished, and probably have increased. So now there's still also a big question. I'm not really hearing anybody say more about which they think is more likely, 2030 or 2034. If they were going to do it, I'd hope they do it in 2030. That way maybe I'll still be alive. 2034, but no real more word on that.
I was just curious, during your tour, how does the court factor into their,
The what?
the accord?
Well, the Acre, yeah. So last time around, and we haven't really talked much about that, but last time around it was used as practice ice and it was scheduled very heavily. And I can't remember if we had any preliminary games in there or not. We may have. Most of the preliminary games were done either at the Maverick Center or down at the Provo Ice Sheet. And I would imagine it's probably the same sort of setup this time around. I don't think the Accord, haven't been in it myself for a while, but I understand it's got some aging issues, so it's probably in not as good a shape. But on the other hand, there's really not a lot that really needs to be fixed up in that sort of scenario, right? There's basically the put your skates on area and some small area of bleachers and maintaining the ice equipment, and that's about it. So it's probably not a real hard bring back up.
Did we have the Cultural Celebration Center in 22?
We did not. No, that wasn't built till about 2003. So that is actually, glad you brought that up. That was something else we talked about with them, in the sense that you've got all this other extra space that we could lease out for meetings or committees, or sort of like we rented out the Ridges
And we rented out
clubhouse to the,
Harmon Hall.
right, yeah, and Harmon Hall, was Harmon Hall built? Yeah.
It was the Heineken House.
Yeah, it was the Heineken House up at the Ridge. Yeah. Or
Was that at the
Harmon?
Ridge?
You know, I think it was at the Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Crazy event, crazy time. But it was a lot of
Good
fun.
times.
I mean, assuming it can be made to work financially again. And once again, I mean, that's another plus, I would say, to the viability of it. And Fraser Bullock was a key part of making that happen financially last time, along with Mitt Romney. And here he is again. So he knows how to shape it, make make that work, so. That is actually also, I should say, a big part of their strategy as they are kind of promoting Salt Lake is our venues are in place. We can do this a lot cheaper than any place would have to build the venues. They're ready to go. We've maintained them well over the 20+ years. So that's probably the single biggest reason why they think our bid would be the most likely to be approved.
Good. Okay. Anything else on future agenda items? Okay, we'll move on to council reports. Nobody? Went to a tree planting last week for Arbor Day. Can't remember, it was Friday. I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday, but they did a good job. And Darren has some very unique, fun trees that he's adding to that little area. And so we were talking while we were there as to whether or not we should put a plaque up that explains the different trees. So if residents love that tree, want to put that tree in their yard, and maybe not a plaque at every tree, but a map of what they are and a little bit of an explanation or a name so they can Google it. So I don't know if Nancy wants to do that or not, but we kind of talked about that because there are some unique, I mean, when Darren was telling the students that were there to plant them, what the different species were and what they did, it was pretty fun. So I'm not much of a tree person, but as far as knowledge on them, but he's got the knowledge like crazy town.
Yeah, Darren is good.
Yeah. So just a thought for the future. Any other council reports? 0. Okay, we have need for a closed session for our pending litigation. Anybody that would like to make that motion?
Move that we adjourn, move into a closed session to discuss pending litigation, and following that session, we'll adjourn without further business.
Thank you. Second. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, we will go